what a bad way to try and give people respect for the law. That's instilling hypocrisy into young people. So by every reason, we ought to be simply making it a matter of personal choice. Now, as strong an argument as that is in general, the notion that we penalize people or prevent medical marijuana is just nuts. If you were going to make a list of the medications that are given to people who are ill, marijuana would be pretty low down on the list of potency. It is not mind-altering in anything like that degree. It's not habit-forming. It's not, it just, and there is simply, I think the history of it is, I don't know, people here I assume have seen, some of you, Reefer Madness. If you think about it historically, marijuana was seen as the recreational drug of choice for people rebelling against the status quo and the establishment. It began, by the way, with an interracial situation. If you'll go back, marijuana was jazz musicians, black and white people who dated each other. It very much was part of that. Then it became the weapon of choice against the establishment in the 60s in the economic situation. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Marijuana Commission that Richard Nixon reported. And they came back and said it shouldn't be legalized, but they had a hard time figuring out why. You know, most of us, when you do a problem, you start over here and then you have the equal sign and you come up with the answer. Sometimes, though, people start with the answer, and then they have to construct the equation that got them to that answer. So it was foreordained that they were going to come up with an equation with an answer that said marijuana should stay illegal. They had, go read the report, they had a hell of a time coming up with a reason. And the reason they came up with was that if people were allowed to smoke marijuana, they wouldn't be as active economically, and it would be bad for the gross domestic product. Now, even on those terms, that would run into problems if you try to justify the continued prohibition on hemp, because there's a great economic argument there. But the best they could come up with was that if people smoke marijuana, they won't be as entrepreneurial, as energetic, they won't want to work an extra 10 hours a week, and it will be bad for the overall economy. The notion that we cannot allow people to enjoy themselves or to relax because they won't overwork themselves is, of course, wholly antithetical to any sense of personal freedom. The point is that most people know this and think this. And so I just would urge you, please, as angry, you know, sometimes I've had people say, well, you know what, those politicians piss me off, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. Let me tell you, all right, here's the deal. If your reaction to a politician pissing you off is to then abstain from the political system, you have made the person who pissed you off deliriously happy. Because what could be better for someone who runs for office than to have people who think he's being a jerk ignore him? That's never going to work. We need people to vote. We need people to get engaged. And we need everybody here, if you haven't already, I'm told there were a couple of legislators here, write to everybody who represents you in elected office and say, I think these laws are expensive. You know, marijuana now costs this society because we prosecute people and we have all that effort. If you treated it the way you treat other substances, allowed it to be legal, there obviously has to be an age difference. There would be, we would hope, a quality protection. You would then be able to tax it and make some money. Now, I know, look, there are probably some people here who, from the standpoint of their own personal freedom, might be better off if we didn't do it. On the other hand, the price probably comes down when you get rid of prohibition. And certainly the extent to which, you know, people say, well, you know, marijuana, it's associated with all these other harder drugs. Of course it is, by us, by the law. We're the one who create that association. Whatever you think about other drugs, the main thing that marijuana has in common with heroin is that we make them both illegal. If marijuana was not legal, what would be the connection to heroin? Nothing. Except maybe the same people might be in the distribution of it because you've made it illegal. So I'm glad to be here and to thank the people who are making this fight. And I just urge you all, look, if it was hopeless, I guess there are three kinds of political fights. There are the hopeless kind. Then there are the kind that everybody's for them. This is in the middle. It's the kind of fight worth making. It's a fight that's very winnable. It's a fight where I think the majority of the American people understand what's sensible and are for it. And in fact, if you look even at the arguments of the Tea Party and others, I'm not often a supporter of theirs, but some of what they argue would lead in this direction. And one of my great coordinators on all this, and collaborators and allies, is Ron Paul, who's a legitimate libertarian, unlike many of the other conservatives who talk about, they're for the freedom to sell adulterated products, but not the freedom to do what you want to do. So please, let me just encourage you, get involved, get organized, register to vote, write to your representative and senator and your state legislators, because this is a fight that I believe that within 10 years we're probably going to be able to have substantially diminished the criminal treatment of marijuana. And there's one other thing in common. I just came from a meeting, a rally in Algonquin. Jim and I were at for on a gay rights issue, celebrating the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In both cases, this is a generational fight. The younger people are, the more sensible they are in this issue. And I think this is going to go forward. But it doesn't happen automatically. In other words, I'm making the argument not that this is going to happen without our participation, but that it can happen if we participate intelligently, if you participate intelligently in the political process. So I thank everybody for being here, and I tell you, make sure you vote, you write to them, you tell them this is an issue that's important to you, and I honestly believe that 10 years from now we will have substantially diminished the extent to which people are A, prosecuted for taking medicine, and B, prosecuted at all for smoking, because they have decided that with their money on their time as adults, they want to have some recreation. Thank you.
I just have one comment.
Sure.
On the IRS thing, and I know that we didn't cover that at all, but we have a lot of important people here that think we can mention something about it.
Yeah, no, the important question, that is, well, I had this problem. Was this about the bank accounts?
Yes.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. First of all, there was a problem with marijuana clinics not being able to have bank accounts. And as chairman of the Committee on Financial Services, I complained about that. And apparently there's a statute that we have to get fixed to do that because it says if the drug is illegal. And we have to get that one fixed. And then there's the issue of the IRS not allowing the deduction. Of course, the problem is that you're not supposed to deduct for illegal things. I think what we might be able to do, though, is, and I'd like to obviously do it more broadly, but to follow the model that the administration is now following with regard to the Defense of Marriage Act. What the President just said with regard to the Defense of Marriage Act is not that they're going to be arguing that you have a right, if you are of the same sex, to marry anywhere in America, but that if your state allows it, the federal government won't try to stop it and will honor it. And that's what we need to do here. Where the state allows it, and the argument is that, well, deductibility cannot happen if it's illegal. What I will be pushing for will be to change that and say, okay, we're not going to try and get rid of that altogether, because that'd be too hard to win politically. I don't mind taking the position, but it wouldn't win, and we want to be practical. Instead, we would take the position that where your state allows, that the definition of what's legal should be controlled by what's legal in the state, rather than by the federal government. Yes. That's very doable. So yeah, right. We will get a bill on that. When I get back, and we'll get you the number, the legislation.
Classification, where are we at on that? I'm sorry, I might have missed that earlier.
I'm going to be announcing that one soon. To basically, I think the position ought to be that there should be no federal law against the use of marijuana. If the states want to do it, the states will do it. And the federal law would have to say, as with alcohol, if a state could be a prohibitionist state. Under the U.S. Constitution, under Article 21, Amendment 21, which repealed the 18th Amendment. If a state wants to ban all alcohol, it can, and then the federal government would make it illegal to send alcohol into that state. That's what we ought to do with marijuana. We ought to repeal all the federal rules. If a state wants to make it illegal, that's not a federal issue, and I can't do anything with that. But we will be moving on that one as well. And so those are, but the other one, though, short of that, is for medical marijuana only, where the definition of what's legal for the purposes of deductibility ought to be what's legal in the state, not at the federal level. Thank you all.
Thank you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Barney Frank. He did this for nothing here. And we want to keep him on our side, so let's show him some support. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.